And Charlie, try not to fall over the tree. I felt so blessed as I was driving up through the valley this morning. There was a time after I graduated from college that I lived in New York for several years. And I always looked forward to fall. I lived in the town of Ithaca, which is built on 4 hills. And I happened to live on East Hill, but as I looked across, there was a hill, sort of mountains, and it was covered with deciduous trees. And each fall, the color was just beyond beautiful. And as a Southern California girl, it was the first time I had really experienced fall in that way. And memories came up as I drove through the valley this summer. And I thought, oh, Carolyn, you are so fortunate. You're taking your own fall leaf tour this morning. This morning, we are continuing with our series on the 12 powers. Next Sunday, the next Sunday that I get to be with you will be Advent. So we will get to celebrate the beginnings. I think it's the second week of Advent together. But this morning in our 12 power continuation, we're going to be talking about the power of zeal. And I want you to listen. Our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, said this: I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm, and I spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that need to be done by me. This is attributed to Charles when he was 94, but Charles didn't live to be 94. So it was probably when he was 92 or 3 that he said this. But if you've ever seen films of Charles, you know that he did sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. I don't know what you think, but when you hear that word zeal, does it make you feel joyful and heartened and enthusiastic? Or does it make you feel sort of, oh, I've never really liked the word zeal because it has that feeling to me of just sort of over the top enthusiasm. Where I don't know, I guess I think of religious zealots or political zealots who are just so focused and so intense. And I don't like that feeling. But as often happens, when I raise my consciousness and study in a new and a different way, I always learn things. And so this morning, when we talk about zeal together, what I'm going to do is talk about some of the softer qualities of that power, so that if you feel like I do, that zeal is just sort of over the top, that maybe you can accept in your life, like I'm learning to accept in mine, more zeal. Our co-founder, once again, Charles Fillmore, calls the power of zeal the dynamic power of the great universal impulse that lies back of all action. If you remember, when we were together last month, we talked about will, and we said that will is in charge of all of the other powers. It is our CEO, and it is the one that helps us to move forward. We would not move forward without will. But Charles also tells us about zeal, that it is the affirmative impulse. It is that command that says, go forward. So in sort of balancing those two, zeal is telling us to go forward. It is will that is pushing us forward. And it's one of those situations where we can truly see how all 12 powers need to work together to make us a whole and a complete being. It was really funny. I was invited to speak last week at my old church, Unity Church of Reading, and it was quite fun being back there. And in the congregation, there's a developmentally delayed young woman. And I think
I can't remember what I was talking about, but I used that word being. And she said, "What is a being?" And so I had to stop and think. And in the middle of the talk, what is a being? And so we just talked briefly about how we are beings on this earth, we are form, but that we are also beings in that we are spiritual. We aren't always just in this human body doing. We are a spiritual essence. And as Spirit speaks through us, we can exhibit our zeal in whatever way that may mean. At some time or another in our lives, most of us make a commitment to something with a great deal of zeal. I happen to regularly make commitments to not eating sugar, or at least as much sugar, and to exercising more. And I get all excited and worked up because I know that this time I'm going to stick with my commitment. But not very long later, something happens. Like I come to the potluck and I see the brownies and the persimmon bread and the pecan pie, and Diane said she'd made lime cups. Well, today is not a no sugar day. I can tell you that. I hope I exercise when I get home. In order for zeal to work with us in a positive way and not an exhausting way, we need to combine it with our power of wisdom and with our power of love. We use wisdom to discern and to judge. How much should I do? How much energy do I need to expend on this? And I know that you must do like I do, that there are times that you tend to use every bit of energy you have towards something. And what I'm beginning to learn is that I don't always have to use my full energy, that there are degrees of energy, that sometimes when my babies were little or when my grandbaby Juliana was little, if they were doing something that could be dangerous, I would use my full extent of energy to protect them. But there are things that I do now, like I can garden like a fiend. I mean, I get out there and I just like to work like crazy, and then I pay the price later. And I recognize I'm finally beginning to learn I do not have to use all of that energy toward gardening in one day. I can divide it up. I can do an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, or I don't have to expend all my energy using all of that zeal in one time. I need to be discerning by using my power of wisdom. We also help to tame our zeal by using our power of love. Is what I am putting my energy toward something that I really feel passionate about? Now, all of us in our lives have things to do that we're not passionate about. We wash our dishes, we cook a meal, we out of choice. So when we use our power of love to help us tame our zeal, we begin putting aside a lot of those shoulds that we have, And we say, is this something that I really want to do? Is this really something that I have some passion for? And that I can use my zeal, my enthusiasm, my energy with an open heart, with a feeling that I am doing something that brings something to me, just like it does to the other person. Because I know if I do something I think I should do, oftentimes there's a little bit of resentment with it. And, as good unity people, we don't like to think we have feelings like resentment. But I will tell you, if you dig deep and are honest, there might be just this much there. We are human beings. So as we put our passion and our zeal onto things, we use our wisdom and we use our love. And we keep things in balance so that we don't burn ourselves out. Because when we go too full bore into something that we are not passionate about, we burn out quickly, don't we? Each of us, I am sure, at some time or another has experienced that dark, dark time in our souls when it just feels like, oh my goodness, can I go on? There was a time like that earlier in my life. I was in an abusive marriage, and the time had come. I didn't have the skill set at the time to say no. I just truly did not know how to say no about things. And I knew that if I said yes to this person that I was married to one more time, I would end up in the loony bin. I knew I would just lose all sense of who I was. And so I went to counseling, and I had a very strong, straightforward, powerful person. And he helped me recognize that I can accept more for my life. And he taught me about setting boundaries. And he taught me about saying no. And he taught me that I could leave this relationship in such a way that I would feel safe. And sometimes what we have to recognize is it takes our zeal to move us ahead and out of a situation where we feel hopeless or that it might seem impossible. So when something seems too hard, or when something seems almost impossible to do for whatever reason, bring forth that feeling of zeal. I believe the color of zeal is orange. And just imagine something beautiful like the orange fall trees, and garner that zeal and know that you have been given the innate power to move ahead out of any situation that is not right and good for you and into your joy. The universe, God, whatever you choose to call spirit, has one desire for us, and it is joy. That is the desire that the universe has for us. And if you look at nature, and if you can look in retrospect at your whole life and recognize that even if your life today isn't exactly like to have it, that each thing that you walk
she said she was in sort of a funky way in her life, and she decided that she needed to do things that scared her, that could turn into zeal for her.
Into something greater. And as
Glimmer of something this morning or later on.
nurture it, nurture that seed and see where it goes. Maybe it'll sprout and you'll say, no, this is not for me after all. But maybe it will sprout and it'll become a bush or a tree or whatever for you in your life.